What if everything you've been taught about heaven was only a shadow of a far deeper truth? Not a place above the clouds, not a reward waiting at the end of life, but a mystery hidden in plain sight, one ancient sages, mystics, and prophets whispered about behind temple walls, encoded in symbols and parables so that only the worthy would understand. Imagine this: a 12th century Sufi mystic sits beneath the stars, gazing into the infinite sky. A student asks him, "Master, is heaven real?" The mystic smiles, not with certainty, but with knowing, and replies, "Heaven is not a destination. It is a state, and most are already in it, yet remain blind." You see, for thousands of years, spiritual traditions across the world have pointed to a deeper understanding of heaven. But organized systems, hungry for control, reshaped these teachings into something external, something distant, later elsewhere. The concept of heaven became domesticated: streets of gold, harps and halos, judgment and reward. But the original teachings were never so literal or so small. In this video, we're going to peel back the layers of dogma and rediscover the ancient esoteric truth about heaven. We'll journey through sacred texts, forgotten philosophies, and spiritual revelations that point not to the sky, but inward. We'll explore why ancient Egyptians spoke of heaven in terms of the soul's resonance, why early Christians spoke in code, hiding Gnostic truths beneath familiar parables, why Eastern traditions describe enlightenment not as a place, but as an awakening. This isn't just theory. These insights have practical implications, because if heaven is a state of being, you don't have to die to enter it. You only have to remember. So stay with me, and together we'll uncover the truth about heaven they never preached, because some truths are too powerful to be spoken from the pulpit. Heaven is closer than you think, and it may not be what you were told. To truly understand the hidden truth about heaven, we must first unearth its roots, not in modern sermons or glossy children's Bibles, but in the cryptic language of mystics, the glyphs of the ancients, and the whispers of forgotten philosophies. Long before the idea of heaven as a celestial reward was popularized, civilization spoke of it in veiled terms: symbolic, metaphysical, and inward-facing. In ancient Egypt, heaven was not merely the field of reeds, a paradise of eternal harvest. It was a state of ma'at, the divine balance of the soul with cosmic law. The weighing of the heart was not a literal judgment, but a metaphor for resonance. If your heart, your essence, was as light as the feather of truth, you were in harmony with the all. To them, heaven wasn't given, it was achieved through alignment. The Hindu Upanishads, some of the most ancient philosophical texts in the world, don't describe heaven as a place to escape to, but speak of Brahman, the supreme reality, and Atman, the soul. The revelation? They are one and the same. Tat Tuvam Asi, the sages declared, "Thou art that." In this view, heaven is realized not after death, but in the moment the soul awakens to its divine origin. Consider the Gnostics, early Christian mystics whose writings were buried for centuries. They taught that the kingdom of heaven was not in the sky, but within you and all around you. Their Gospel of Thomas, excluded from the canonical Bible, records Jesus saying, "If those who lead you say, 'Look, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds will get there first. If they say, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will beat you to it. Rather, the kingdom is inside you, and it is outside you." Why was this perspective suppressed? Because a heaven that must be earned through obedience gives power to institutions. But a heaven that can be realized through inner awakening returns power to the individual. That shift from authority to autonomy threatened the religious hierarchies of their time. In Buddhism, the concept of nirvana is often likened to heaven, but not as a reward. It is the cessation of illusion, the extinguishing of ego, the liberation from cycles of craving. Again, this is not somewhere you go, but something you become. Enlightenment is the experience of pure being, of unity with what is. And across the indigenous cultures of the Americas, Africa, and Oceania, we find echoes of this same truth. Shamans spoke of upper worlds not as final destinations, but as levels of consciousness accessed through dreams, visions, and sacred rites. Heaven was a frequency, a vibration, a dimension you could touch if your spirit was attuned. From Mesopotamia to the Himalayas, from the Dead Sea Scrolls to Zen koans, we find a consistent thread. Heaven is not out there. It is a sacred state of inner alignment, of conscious awareness, of divine remembrance. So how did we lose this? How did an inner realization become an external afterlife? That unraveling begins with power, with empire, with a shift from mystical experience to religious doctrine. As ancient wisdom gave way to organized religion, symbols were made literal and metaphors were weaponized. But the original teachings were never destroyed, only buried. And now we dig them up. In the next section, we'll break down this mystery even further. What does it really mean to say heaven is a state of consciousness? How can you enter it, not someday, but now? You're about to decode the keys hidden within ancient wisdom and how they point to an entirely different map of reality. Let us now walk deeper into the mystery. If heaven is not a physical place but a state of consciousness, what does that actually mean? To begin, picture consciousness as a vast spectrum, like the light spectrum. Most of us live within a narrow band of perception, only able to see a limited range. But just as ultraviolet and infrared light exist beyond our ordinary vision, so too do levels of consciousness beyond our everyday awareness. Heaven, in this context, is not up, it's in. It is the realization of the divine within your own being, a shift in vibration, a return to your original nature. Think of it like tuning a radio. The music is already there, broadcast through the airwaves, but unless your dial is tuned to the right frequency, all you'll hear is static. Heaven is not absent, it is present, but we are out of tune. This is why mystics across cultures have spoken not of traveling to heaven, but of awakening to it. Consider the concept of the kingdom within, referenced by Christ and echoed in countless esoteric traditions. This kingdom isn't a monarchy in the clouds, it's a metaphor for a state of divine coherence. When your mind, heart, and spirit are aligned, when you're no longer trapped in illusion or fear, you begin to dwell in a space that sages have called heaven. But here's where it gets profound. Heaven is not one place, but a multitude of layers nested within the fabric of consciousness itself. In the Kabbalistic tree of life, heaven isn't singular, it's represented as multiple spheres, Sephiroth of divine emanation. Each one corresponds to a different quality of being, wisdom, beauty, compassion, understanding. As you ascend these levels through inner work, you don't travel upward, you expand inward. In Tibetan Buddhism, the Pure Lands are states of realization so refined that they become realms of bliss. These aren't rewards handed out, they are cultivated by aligning thought, speech, and action with truth. In other words, they are created by the state of your soul. The more conscious you become, the more access you have to what was always there. This is not poetic metaphor. Science itself now whispers ancient truths. Quantum physicists tell us that matter is mostly empty space and that consciousness plays a role in shaping reality. Neuroscience shows that our perceptions are not fixed, they are filtered. Reality is not absolute, it is interpreted, which begs the question, what else have we been filtering out? When the mystics say heaven is here and now, they mean it literally, but not through the eyes of ego. Through the lens of higher awareness, the same world you once saw as mundane becomes luminous. Ordinary moments become sacred. The veil begins to lift. This is why monks can radiate peace in silence, why shamans can journey without leaving their bodies. Why mystics smile at death not because they seek to escape life, but because they've already touched eternity within it. But here's the catch. To enter this heaven, you must die before you die. This ancient phrase found in Sufi poetry and Gnostic scriptures is not about physical death, but the death of illusion, the dissolution of the false self. The ego must surrender, the mind must quiet, the heart must open. Only then can the inner temple reveal itself. Heaven is not for the perfect. It is for the present, not for those who believe, but for those who remember. Remember what? That you were not separate, that you were never cast out, that the garden was never lost, it was only forgotten. The gates of heaven were never locked. Simply stop looking in the right direction. In the next section, we'll dive even deeper what keeps us from this state. What are the veils that cloud our vision? And what is the most misunderstood teaching of all, the idea of judgment? Prepare yourself. The deeper we go, the clearer it all becomes. If heaven is a state of consciousness, a realm of awareness that already exists within and around us, then why does it remain hidden from so many? The answer lies in what ancient traditions called the veils. These veils are not literal curtains, but distortions in perception, mental, emotional, and spiritual filters that obscure our true nature. These veils are not literal curtains, but distortions in perception, mental, emotional, and spiritual filters that obscure our true nature. They are the accumulated layers of fear, trauma, ego, desire, and false identity that keep us tethered to a lesser frequency. Imagine a mirror. In its pure state, it reflects light perfectly. But when dirt, dust, and cracks cover the surface, the reflection becomes distorted. You are the mirror. Heaven is the light. The veils are the dust. Let's explore these veils more deeply. In Gnostic Christianity, the material world is not evil, but it is seen as a distraction, a simulation that draws us away from gnosis or direct knowledge of the divine. They spoke of the archons, spiritual forces that manipulate perception and keep the soul asleep. In modern language, you might call them limiting beliefs, unconscious patterns, or collective conditioning. In Vedantic philosophy, these veils are called Maya, illusion. Maya convinces us that we are separate from the divine, that we are this body, this name, this fleeting identity. As long as we remain hypnotized by Maya, heaven is veiled. This illusion of separation is the original fall, not a single event in a garden long ago, but a chronic amnesia that plagues humanity. We fell not from grace, but from awareness. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood elements of all, judgment. In many religions, judgment is depicted as a celestial courtroom, a divine ledger weighing your sins against your virtues. But in esoteric traditions, judgment is something radically different. It is not punishment. It is reflection. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the soul stands before Osiris, and its heart is weighed against a feather. But this is not God casting verdict. It is the soul judging itself. Did you live in alignment with truth? Did your actions harmonize with your essence? Similarly, in the Tibetan Bardo Thodol, known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the soul is confronted with radiant deities. If it recognizes them as projections of its own enlightened mind, it ascends. If it recoils in fear, it descends into confusion. Heaven and hell are not places, but responses to truth. Judgment, then, is a mirror. And heaven? The soul's natural state once the distortions are cleared. But this leads to a powerful realization. Heaven is not binary. It is not in or out, saved or damned. It is graduated, layered, dynamic. Mystics speak of the many mansions in the house of God. The Sufis describe countless stages of the soul's journey, each more subtle and sublime. The Kabbalists map it out as ascending levels of the soul, nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yekida, each closer to source. These levels are not just metaphysical, they are experiential. Right now, in this very moment, your perception could rise or fall based on your state of awareness. A shift from fear to love, from control to surrender, from ego to essence changes your world. not metaphorically, literally. What one person calls ordinary life, another experiences as divine communion. One sees chaos, the other sees divine orchestration. One suffers in separation, the other walks in the garden of unity. So what separates these two? Not time, not death, but awareness. This is the secret that was hidden in plain sight. When scriptures say the kingdom of God is at hand, they do not mean coming soon. They mean within reach, here, now. And yet few grasp it because they wait for heaven to come after life, not realizing that it waits for them to awaken within life. You see, heaven was never a prize for the pious. It was a path for the present, a state you earn not by pleasing a deity, but by shedding illusion, by dying to falsehood, by awakening to truth. And here is the paradox: the gate to heaven is narrow, not because it's exclusive, but because few dare to look inside themselves. But if you do, if you pause, breathe, and allow the veil to thin, you may find that heaven is not somewhere you go when you die. It's where you remember who you really are. In the next section, we'll move from insight to action, practical methods, timeless techniques, and inner practices that will help you tune your frequency to the vibration of heaven. Because knowing is not enough. Heaven must be lived. Now that we've uncovered the deeper meaning of heaven as a state of expanded consciousness rather than a distant reward, the next question becomes, how do we enter it? The good news? You don't need to cross a desert, climb a mountain, or wait for death. The path is already under your feet. You only need to walk it with awareness. Here are 5 timeless practices drawn from ancient wisdom traditions that serve as keys to the inner gates of heaven. Silence as sacred space. In nearly every esoteric tradition, silence is the gateway to divine presence. The mystics understood that noise, both outer and inner, clogs the channel between you and higher states. In silence, something ancient stirs. Your surface identity softens. The veil begins to thin. Practice. Begin each day with 10 minutes of stillness. No phone, no distractions. Simply sit, breathe, observe. This is not about emptying the mind, but about listening. Over time, this silence becomes a temple where heaven whispers. The art of inner alignment. Living in Maat, the ancient Egyptians knew that the soul must resonate with truth, harmony, and justice to enter the higher realms. They called this Maat. When your thoughts, feelings, and actions align with the higher truth, your frequency rises. You become a vessel for heaven's light. Practice. At the end of each day, reflect, where did I act from love instead of fear? Where was I honest, compassionate, or courageous? Where was I misaligned, and how can I return to center? This simple review is more than moral. It's energetic. It refines the soul. Conscious breath, the stairway within. Breath is more than biology. It's your link between spirit and form. Many traditions refer to breath as spiritus, prana, or ruach. It is life itself. When you breathe consciously, you access what mystics called the still point. Here, time slows, thoughts fade, and heaven emerges, not as an idea, but as a felt presence. Practice throughout the day. Pause and take 3 slow, conscious breaths. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Feel the breath entering your body. Feel life moving through you. This anchors you in presence, the doorway to the divine. Symbolic reframing. Reality is layered with meaning. What appears random or mundane is often symbolic, rich with messages, if your eyes are attuned. Mystics trained themselves to read life symbolically. To them, every encounter was a lesson, every obstacle a mirror, every joy a glimpse of heaven. Practice. Choose one challenging event in your life and ask, if this were a dream or a teaching, what is it trying to show me? This reframing shifts you from victim to visionary and trains your mind to see beyond illusion. Heart coherence, feeling heaven, the heart, is not just a pump. It's an electromagnetic field, a compass of truth. When your heart and mind align, you enter coherence. From this space, the divine can speak. Practice. Place your hand over your heart. Close your eyes. Recall a moment of deep love or gratitude. Feel it fully. Let it fill your chest, expand outward. Hold this feeling for 1-2 minutes. You've just tuned yourself to heaven's frequency. Nothing's changing, but change is subtle at first. Like dawn, it arrives gradually. The ego will resist, fearing the loss of control. Meet it with compassion, not war. So now we return, not to where we started, but to where we've always truly been. We've journeyed through ancient texts and secret teachings, decoded metaphors, and unveiled the illusion. We've explored how heaven is not above, but within, not someday, but now. Not a prize for the obedient, but a state of consciousness for the awakened. We've seen that the kingdom of heaven is not an afterlife, it is an inner life revealed through silence, alignment, breath, symbol, and heart. It is not accessed through belief alone, but through direct experience, through remembrance. And perhaps most startling of all, it's already here. The gates were never closed. The mystics, the sages, the forgotten prophets, they all pointed to this one blazing truth. You are not meant to wait for heaven. You are meant to become it. And so the question is no longer, will I get into heaven? The real question is, can I recognize it when I'm in it? Because sometimes it comes not with thunder or trumpets, but as a single breath, a sacred silence, a moment of presence so full, so luminous that the veil parts and you remember who you are. So pause, reflect, look within. Heaven isn't hiding. It's simply waiting for you to see with new eyes. If this message stirred something deep within you, don't let it fade. Share it. Reflect on it. Live it. And most importantly, practice it. Because the truth about heaven they never preached is that it's already yours. You need only wake up to claim it.